The warning lights flashed red across the control panel, pulled hard on the steering controls, but his cargo ship was falling apart around him. Smoke filled the small cockpit. Sparks flew from broken wires above his head. The engine had failed completely, and now he was falling toward an unknown planet at dangerous speed. Come on," whispered through his teeth. He was 32 years old, a former soldier turned cargo pilot, and he had survived many bad situations before, but this one looked like the end. His ship, the old and tired vessel he called the Swift Crow, broke through the clouds of the alien world below. Saw tall silver towers reaching toward the sky. He saw massive structures built from metals that shone like jewels. This was not an empty planet. This was a civilization far beyond anything humans had built. The ground came fast, did everything he could to slow the crash. The ship hit the surface and slid across polished stone, throwing sparks in every direction. Metal screamed against rock. Then everything went still. Hung in his seat, held by his safety straps. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His body ached everywhere, but he was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he was still breathing. He released the straps and fell to the floor of the cockpit. With shaking hands, he pushed open the emergency door and crawled outside. What he saw made him freeze. Thousands of beings surrounded the crash site. They stood 7 feet tall, maybe taller. Their skin was silver blue, shining softly under the alien sun. Each one had 4 arms. Their eyes glowed with pale light, and they wore armor that looked both ancient and advanced at the same time. Soldiers, he had crashed in front of an army. Before could move, powerful hands grabbed him. 4 arms lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. He tried to struggle, but it was useless. These beings were strong beyond anything he had ever faced. They carried him through massive gates into a palace that seemed to touch the clouds. Everything was built for giants. The doorways, the stairs, the furniture, all of it made feel like a small child. He was nothing here, a tiny creature from a tiny world. The soldiers brought him to a throne room. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Thousands of the tall aliens filled the chamber, all watching with curious and cold eyes. At the far end, on a throne carved from a single piece of black crystal, sat the largest being had ever seen. The Emperor. What is this? The Emperor's voice boomed through the room. It was not a kind voice. It was the voice of someone who had never been challenged in his life. One of the soldiers stepped forward. Your Majesty, this creature fell from the sky. Its primitive vessel crashed in the festival square. It appears to be human. Whispers spread through the crowd, caught fragments of their words. Human, weak species, young race, primitive, insects. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. His 4 arms rested on the crystal surface. His glowing eyes studied like a scientist studying a small bug. A human, the Emperor said slowly. I have heard of your kind. You live on a small blue world at the edge of explored space. You have barely left your own solar system. You are insignificant. Wanted to argue, but he knew better. He was one man, surrounded by giants, in a palace he did not understand. Speaking back would be stupid. However, the Emperor continued, your timing is interesting. Do you know what day this is, little human? Shook his head. This is the festival of claiming, a sacred tradition of the Empire. Today, warriors from across the galaxy come to win the hand of my daughter, Princess. They fight her in single combat. If they win, they marry her and gain power beyond imagination. If they lose, the Emperor smiled coldly. They die. As if summoned by her name, a door at the side of the throne room opened. The crowd parted in silence. She walked in like a storm given form. Princess stood as tall as the soldiers around her. Her silver blue skin was covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift. Her 4 arms moved with deadly grace. She wore armor stained with fresh blood, and in one hand she carried a blade longer than was tall. Behind her, servants dragged the body of a massive reptilian creature. It must have weighed 1,000 pounds. Its scales were like shields, its claws like swords, and it was dead. She had killed it. "My daughter," the emperor said with pride, "has just defeated her 500th suitor. No warrior in the galaxy can match her." Walked past the crowd and stopped directly in front of. She looked down at him like he was dirt beneath her feet. Her glowing eyes showed nothing but complete contempt. "This is what crashed into our sacred square?" she asked. Her voice was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "This small, weak, fragile thing." Met her eyes. Something in him refused to look away. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was pride, but he had faced death before. He would not cower like a beaten animal. Seemed almost surprised by his defiance. Then she laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "It thinks it is brave," she said to the crowd. "How amusing." The emperor raised his hand for silence. "There is a matter of law to discuss. This human set foot on palace grounds during the festival of claiming. According to ancient tradition, any male who enters these grounds during the festival must either fight in the arena or be executed." The crowd murmured in excitement. Looked at with something like pity. "Choose execution, little creature. It will be faster, less painful." His heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced through the impossible situation. Fight a 7-foot warrior who had killed 500 beings stronger than him. That was death. Accept execution. That was also death. But there was a difference. If he chose to fight, he would die on his feet. He would die as a warrior. He would die as a human. He looked at the princess. He looked at the emperor. He looked at the thousands of aliens who expected him to break down and beg. "I choose to fight." The throne room fell silent. Then slowly, laughter began to spread. It grew and grew until the whole chamber shook with it. They were laughing at him. The small, weak, pathetic human who thought he could stand against their undefeated princess. Princess did not laugh. She stared at with an expression he could not read. "So be it," the emperor declared. "In 3 days the human will face Princess in the arena of claiming. May the ancestors witness his courage and his foolishness." The soldiers grabbed again and dragged him from the throne room. As they pulled him away, he took one last look at Princess. She was still watching him, and for just a moment something flickered in her cold eyes. Was it curiosity? Did not know, but he knew one thing for certain. He had 3 days to prepare for the fight of his life. And he would not waste a single second. The cell was small and cold. The ceiling was so low that could touch it with his fingertips, even though he was not tall by human standards. Everything in the empire was built for giants. He was reminded of this fact every moment. A thin sleeping mat lay on the stone floor. A metal bowl sat in the corner with water that tasted strange. Twice a day, a guard pushed a tray of alien food through a slot in the door. The food looked wrong and smelled worse, but ate it anyway. He needed strength. 3 days, that was all he had. On the first day, he sat in silence and thought about his situation. Fighting Princess directly was suicide. She was faster, stronger, and had 4 arms to his 2. She had killed 500 warriors, many of them massive creatures built for battle. He was just a cargo pilot. A former soldier, yes, but nothing special. No genetic enhancements. No alien technology in his body. Just a regular human made of flesh and bone. So what could he do? Had learned something important during his years of military service. When you cannot overpower your enemy, you must outthink them. War was not always about who was strongest. Sometimes it was about who was most creative, who was willing to do what the enemy did not expect. He needed information. On the second day, a guard came to his cell. It was a younger, smaller than the others, with curiosity in his glowing eyes. "Human," the guard said, "the Empire has decided to show mercy. You will be allowed to watch recordings of past duels. This way, you can appreciate the greatness of our princess before you die." They thought they were mocking him. They thought showing him how powerful was would break his spirit, but smiled inside. This was exactly what he needed. The guard brought him to a small chamber with a viewing screen. For hours, watched recording after recording of Princess fights. She was magnificent. There was no other word for it. She moved like water and struck like lightning. Her 4 arms worked in perfect coordination, attacking from angles that seemed impossible. Every opponent fell before her, warriors with thick armor, beasts with poisonous claws, machines built for destruction. Nothing could touch her. But was not watching to admire her skill. He was watching to find weakness. Slowly, he began to notice something strange. Princess reacted to attacks before they happened. When a warrior raised his sword, she was already moving out of the way. When an assassin tried to strike from behind, she turned before the blow could land. It was like she could see the future. Then remembered something the emperor had said. They were known for their telepathic combat sense. They could read the intentions of their enemies. They could feel the decision to attack forming in their opponent's mind, and they moved before the attack was launched. That was why no one could beat her. She knew what they were going to do before they did it. Leaned back and closed his eyes. His mind raced through the problem. If she could read intentions, then having clear intentions was the weakness. Every warrior who faced her had a plan. Every warrior thought about their next move before making it. And every time she read those thoughts and defeated them. But what if someone had no plan? What if someone's mind was pure chaos? Humans were not like the logical, ordered species of the galaxy. Humans were messy, emotional, unpredictable. They did stupid things for no reason. They made decisions based on feelings rather than logic. They could think one thing and do another. Could that be the key? That night practiced something he had never practiced before. He practiced not thinking. He practiced moving without deciding to move. He practiced letting his body react without consulting his mind. It felt strange and wrong, like trying to walk backward with his eyes closed. But slowly, he began to understand. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. The door to his cell opened, and Princess herself stepped inside. She had to bend down to fit through the doorway. In the small space, she seemed even more massive and powerful. Her 4 arms hung at her sides, relaxed but ready. Her glowing eyes studied him like he was a puzzle she could not solve. "I wanted to see you," she said. Her voice filled the cell. "I wanted to understand why you chose to fight." Stood up from his sleeping mat. He barely reached her chest. Standing this close to her, he truly understood how hopeless his situation seemed. "Would you have preferred I chose execution?" he asked. "It would have been the logical choice. You cannot win, you must know this." Shrugged, "Probably not, but logic is not always how humans think." This seemed to confuse her. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with new interest. "You are strange," she said. "The other suitors always begged. They cried and pleaded for mercy when they realized what they faced. You do not beg, you do not cry. Why?" Thought about the question. He thought about his home on Earth. He thought about the history of his people, all the wars they fought against impossible odds, all the times they refused to surrender when surrender was the smart choice. "Where I come from," he said slowly, "we do not give up just because we are outmatched. We adapt, we survive. That is what humans do. We have been doing it for thousands of years." Was silent for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression, though could not read what it meant. "You truly believe you have a chance," she said. It was not a question. "I believe I have a choice," replied. "I can die on my knees or I can die on my feet. The second option is better." Stared at him. Her 4 hands opened and closed slowly, like she was imagining how easily she could crush him. Then she turned and walked toward the door. "Tomorrow," she said without looking back, "I will try to make it quick. You have earned that much respect at least." The door closed behind her. Sat down on his sleeping mat. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was calm. Tomorrow, he would face the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy. Tomorrow, he would probably die. But he was ready. He spent the rest of the night in silence, emptying his mind of plans and strategies. He thought about water flowing over rocks. He thought about wind moving through trees. He thought about nothing at all. When the morning came and the guards opened his cell, they found him sitting peacefully with his eyes closed. "It is time, human," the guard said. "The arena waits." Opened his eyes and stood. He did not shake. He did not hesitate. He walked forward with steady steps, following the guards through the massive corridors of the palace. Outside, he could hear the roar of 100,000 voices. The crowd was hungry for entertainment. They wanted to see the weak human crushed by their princess. Smiled quietly to himself. He was about to give them a show they would never forget. The arena of claiming was ancient beyond measure. Its walls had stood for 10,000 years, built from black stone that seemed to drink the light. Carved symbols covered every surface, the names of warriors who had fought and died here, the history of the empire written in blood. 100,000 filled the seats that rose toward the sky. Their silver-blue skin shimmered under the twin suns. Their voices combined into a sound like thunder that never stopped. Beyond the arena, holographic screens carried the image of the fighting ground to every corner of the empire. 1,000,000,000 beings watched from distant worlds, eager to see their princess claim another victory. At the center of it all, the fighting ground waited. A circle of white sand, perfectly smooth, surrounded by walls too high to climb. Once you entered, there was only one way out. Victory or death. Emperor or sat in the royal box above the arena, his massive form draped in ceremonial robes. Beside him sat advisor, a thin and twisted whose eyes held nothing but cold calculation. Had served the empire for centuries. He hated change. He hated outsiders, and he especially hated the idea of a human standing in their sacred arena. "This is an insult," whispered to the emperor. "A human in the arena of claiming. Our ancestors would weep at such disgrace." The emperor watched the arena with patient eyes. The law is clear. He chose to fight. He has that right. "Rights are for warriors," hissed. "This creature is barely evolved. It should be in a zoo, not our sacred ground." The emperor did not respond. His eyes had moved to the far gate where his daughter was emerging. Princess entered the arena like a goddess of war. She wore ceremonial armor that had been passed down through generations of her family. It was black as night and covered in golden symbols that glowed with inner fire. Her 4 arms each held a traditional blade, curved weapons as long as was tall, their edges sharp enough to cut through starship metal. The crowd roared her name. She raised her blades to acknowledge them, and the roar grew even louder. This was their champion, their undefeated warrior, the pride of the entire empire. She walked to the center of the arena and stood with perfect stillness, waiting for her opponent. On the opposite side, the human gate opened. Stepped into the sunlight. He looked almost comical compared to the massive alien warriors who had come before him. He wore no armor, only his worn cargo pilot jumpsuit, still stained from the crash 3 days ago. He carried no weapon. His hands hung empty at his sides. The crowd fell silent for a moment, confused. Then the laughter began. It started as scattered sounds and spread like a wave until the entire arena shook with mocking amusement. The humans had sent this. This small, weak, pathetic thing. It was the greatest joke in the history of the festival. Advisor smiled with satisfaction. Look at it, barely worth the effort of killing. But did not seem to hear the laughter. He walked steadily across the white sand, his eyes fixed on Princess. He did not look afraid. He did not look nervous. He walked like a man who had accepted his fate and made peace with it. Watched him approach. Something flickered in her eyes, the same curiosity she had shown when she visited his cell. This human was different from the others who had faced her. He did not tremble. He did not boast. He simply was. "You came without weapons," she said when he stopped 10 paces from her. Her voice carried across the arena, amplified by ancient technology. "Without armor, do you seek death so eagerly?" Smiled slightly. "Weapons and armor did not help your last 500 opponents. I thought I would try something different." Tilted her head. "You are brave or foolish, perhaps both." "Where I come from," replied, "we say those are often the same thing." High above, the emperor rose from his throne. The arena fell silent. "Warriors," his voice boomed across the sand, "you stand in the arena of claiming. The rules are ancient and absolute. Fight until one cannot continue. There is no surrender. There is no mercy. May the ancestors witness your courage." He raised his hand. A massive gong sounded, a deep, powerful tone that seemed to vibrate the air itself. The duel had begun. Moved instantly. She was impossibly fast, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Her 4 blades came from 4 different angles, a pattern designed to leave no escape. She had used this opening attack 100 times. It always ended the fight in seconds. But was not there. He had moved before her blades arrived, diving to the side in a roll that sent him tumbling across the sand. It was not a graceful movement. It was not elegant, but it worked. Turned, surprised. She had read his mind in the moment before her attack. She had felt his intention to stand firm and try to block, but his body had done something different, something that did not match his thoughts. She attacked again, faster this time. Again, moved in a direction that made no sense. He went low when she expected high. He went left when she expected right. He threw a handful of sand at her face and rolled away while she blinked. The crowd's laughter began to fade. "Stand and fight," someone shouted from the stands. But did not stand and fight. He ran, not away from but around her. He moved in circles and zigzags, changing direction without pattern. He jumped and dodged and dove. He was like a fly that refused to be caught. Struck again and again. Her blades cut through the air with enough force to split stone, but each time they found only empty space. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The arena grew quiet. This had never happened before. Princess fights ended in seconds, never more than a minute. Yet here was this small, weak human, still moving, still breathing, still alive. Stopped her attack. She stood in the center of the arena, her 4 arms raised, her breath slightly faster than before. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Why can I not read you?" Stopped too, keeping his distance. His chest heaved with exhaustion, but his eyes remained focused. "Maybe," he said between breaths, "your gift only works on people who think before they act." "That makes no sense. Everyone thinks." Grinned, blood from a small cut on his cheek running down his face. "That is the thing about humans," he said. "Sometimes we do not think at all. Sometimes we just move and see what happens." Stared at him. For the first time in 500 duels, she felt something she had never felt before. Uncertainty. She raised her blades and prepared to attack again, but now there was something different in her stance, something careful, something cautious. The human had done the impossible. He had made the undefeated princess hesitate. And the fight was only beginning. The twin suns of the moved slowly across the sky. Time stretched and bent inside the arena of claiming. What should have been a quick execution had become something else entirely, something no one had ever witnessed before. The duel had lasted 20 minutes now. Princess attacked with all her skill and fury. Her 4 blades danced through the air in patterns that had killed hundreds of warriors, but refused to die. He did not fight like a warrior. He fought like a cornered animal. He scratched, he bit. He threw sand and dirt. He ran and jumped and rolled and scrambled. He did whatever it took to survive another second, another heartbeat, another breath. Slashed at his chest. He dropped flat to the ground and kicked sand up into her face. She stabbed downward. He rolled between her legs and came up behind her. She spun with all four blades swinging. He ducked so low his face nearly touched the ground. It was ugly. It was messy. It was completely without honor or dignity. And it was working. "Fight me properly," shouted, frustration breaking through her calm warrior's mask. "Stand and face me like a warrior." Was breathing hard. Sweat covered his face. Blood dripped from a dozen small cuts where her blades had come close but not close enough. "Why?" he asked, gasping for air. "So you can kill me faster? No thank you, I prefer staying alive." He started moving again, circling her, never staying still. His mind was empty of plans. He did not think about his next move. He simply reacted to whatever she did, letting his body respond before his brain could catch up. This was the secret he had discovered. Telepathic gift read intentions. It sensed the moment a fighter decided to act, but was not deciding anything. He was just moving, chaos in human form. Lunged at him. He stepped sideways, grabbed a handful of her ceremonial cape and yanked hard. She stumbled. It was only for a moment, but the crowd gasped. The undefeated princess had lost her balance. High in the royal box, Advisor was no longer smiling. His thin face had twisted into an expression of pure hatred. "This is cheating," he snarled at the Emperor. "This is not real combat. The human is just running like a coward." Emperor or did not take his eyes from the arena. The rules say nothing about how to fight, only that there must be a winner. "Your Majesty." "Be silent, I am watching." Down in the arena, the fight continued. Was learning to adapt. She started attacking in patterns designed to cut off his escape routes. She used her four arms to create walls of steel that he could not dodge. Slowly, she was cornering him. Felt the walls closing in. His legs were burning. His lungs were on fire. He could not keep this up forever. Soon she would catch him, and when she did, it would be over. But he was not done yet. He remembered something his grandfather had told him once back on Earth. "When you have no weapon," the old man had said, "use your words, surprise the enemy, make them think about something other than the fight." Opened his mouth and started talking. "You know," he said between gasps, "you are actually quite beautiful when you are trying to kill me." His eyes widened in shock. No suitor had ever spoken to her like this. No suitor had ever spoken at all during combat. "What?" she said, momentarily confused. Kept talking. "And your armor is really nice. Did you pick those colors yourself? They go well with your skin." "What are you doing?" "Just making conversation. This fight is getting boring, do you not think? Same attacks over and over. You should try something new. Maybe a dance move. You would probably be good at dancing." His mind could not process what was happening. He was talking nonsense. Pure, meaningless nonsense. And it was filling his thoughts with so much noise that she could barely read anything at all. She attacked again, angrier now. Her blades came faster. One of them caught his arm, leaving a deep cut that sprayed blood across the white sand. Grunted in pain but did not stop moving. "That was good," he said through gritted teeth. "You almost got me there. 7 out of 10, maybe 8. "Stop talking." "Why does it bother you? I can talk about other things. Food, maybe. What do you eat here? I bet it is weird alien stuff. Fish heads or something. Do you have fish on this planet? I do not even know." Screamed in frustration and charged at him with all her strength. Her 4 blades were a blur of deadly metal. Saw his moment. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he ran directly toward her. Had expected him to run away. She had already committed to a pattern designed to catch him as he retreated. When he came forward instead, she could not adjust in time. Dove under her blades. He came up right in front of her face, closer than any opponent had ever been. For a fraction of a second, they were eye to eye. And then, cargo pilot from Earth, did something that no warrior would ever consider. He headbutted the princess directly in the face. His forehead connected with her nose with a crack that echoed across the silent arena. Pain exploded through his skull. Stars filled his vision, but he did not care about the pain. He cared about what he saw when his vision cleared. Princess, undefeated champion of the Empire, was staggering backward with silver-blue blood flowing from her nose. The arena was completely silent. 100,000 sat frozen, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Their princess was bleeding. For the first time in 500 battles, their princess had been wounded. Backed away, his head pounding. He was barely standing. Blood ran from his arm where her blade had cut him. His body was screaming at him to fall down and give up. But he did not fall. He stayed on his feet, swaying slightly, and looked at Princess with a crooked smile. "My grandmother," he said, his voice rough, "used to hit harder than you." For a long moment just stared at him. Blood dripped from her nose to the white sand below. Then something changed in her face. She started to laugh. It was not mocking laughter. It was not cruel. It was the surprised, delighted laugh of someone who had just discovered something wonderful and unexpected. "You," she said, wiping blood from her face, "are absolutely insane." "Probably," agreed. "Is that good or bad?" Raised her blades again, but there was something different in her eyes now, something that had not been there before. "Respect." "Let us find out," she said. And the fight continued. The duel had passed the 1-hour mark. Nobody in the arena could believe it. The longest fight in the history of the Festival of Claiming had been 12 minutes, and that was considered legendary. But this small human had been surviving for 5 times that long. And he was still standing. Barely. Looked like a man who had walked through a storm of knives. His jumpsuit was torn in a dozen places. Blood covered his arms, his chest, his face. One of his eyes was swelling shut from a blow he had barely dodged. His legs shook with every step. He moved like someone who was running on nothing but pure willpower. But he refused to fall. Princess circled him with careful steps. She too was breathing hard now, not from exhaustion. Her body could fight for days without rest. No, she was breathing hard from something else, from the intensity of a fight that had pushed her in ways she had never been pushed before. The blood on her face had dried. The wound was already healing, as wounds always did. But the memory of that wound would never heal. For as long as she lived, she would remember the moment when a human made her bleed. "You cannot win," she said softly, almost gently. "You know this. Every moment you continue only delays the end." Coughed, blood came with the cough, but he smiled anyway. "I know, but where would be the fun in giving up?" "Fun? You are dying on your feet and you speak of fun." "Better than dying on my knees." Shook her head slowly. Something in her chest felt strange. It was not anger, it was not frustration. It was something warmer, something she had never felt for an opponent before. Admiration. This creature should have been dead 100 times over. He had no weapons, no armor, no special powers. He was just flesh and bone and a spirit that refused to break. And somehow, that simple thing, that pure, stubborn refusal to surrender, was more impressive than any sword or spell. She attacked again, but slower now. She was no longer trying to kill him quickly. She was testing him, seeing how much further he could go. Dodged the first blade barely. He twisted away from the second. The third caught his side, opening a wound that made him cry out in pain. But instead of falling, he grabbed the blade itself with his bare hand. Blood ran between his fingers. The pain must have been terrible, but he held on. "Got you," he whispered through gritted teeth. Before could pull her weapon free, kicked her in the knee. It was not a powerful kick. It did not hurt her, but it surprised her enough that she loosened her grip. Pulled the blade from her hand. One of her 4 blades, not much but something. He staggered backward, holding the weapon that was almost as tall as he was. His hands left bloody prints on the handle. He could barely lift it, but he had it. The crowd had stopped laughing long ago. Now they watched in complete silence, hypnotized by what they were seeing. Impressive, admitted, but you cannot use that weapon. It was made for hands, 4 of them. Looked at the blade. She was right. It was too long, too heavy, too awkward for him to swing properly. So he did not try to swing it. Instead, he flipped it around and threw it like a spear. The blade spun through the air toward. She blocked it easily with one of her remaining weapons, but the throw had been a distraction. While she was blocking, charged. He crashed into her legs with all his remaining strength. It was like hitting a wall, was solid muscle and bone, far heavier than any human, but had momentum and surprise on his side. He wrapped his arms around her legs and pulled with everything he had. For one impossible moment, the princess of the empire fell. They went down together, crashing onto the white sand in a tangle of limbs. Scrambled, trying to get on top of her, trying to find any advantage. But she was too strong. She threw him off like he weighed nothing. He hit the ground hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Dark spots danced in his vision. "Get up." The voice in his head was faint, distant. His body was screaming at him to stay down. Every muscle, every bone, every cell wanted to surrender. "Get up." Placed his hands on the sand, pushed, his arms shook, his whole body shook, but slowly, painfully, impossibly he rose. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the broken human climbed to his feet. Stood before him, her remaining 3 blades ready. She could end this now. One strike would be enough. He had nothing left. But she did not strike. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you keep getting up?" Swayed on his feet, blood dripped from his wounds onto the white sand. He could barely see through his swollen eye. Every breath was agony. But he smiled. "Because that is what humans do," he said. "We get knocked down, we get hurt. We lose everything, but we get up, every time, no matter what. We get up and we keep going. Even when there is no hope." Especially then. Stared at him for a long moment. The arena was so quiet that could hear his own heartbeat, slow and stubborn, refusing to stop. Then Princess did something that shocked everyone. She dropped her blades. All 3 of them fell to the sand at her feet. She stood unarmed before him, her 4 arms empty, her eyes never leaving his face. "I have fought 500 warriors," she said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. "Champions of 100 worlds, creatures of terrible power and skill. I defeated them all without effort." She took a step toward him. "But none of them made me feel what you have made me feel. None of them showed me what true courage looks like. You have taught me something today, human." She stopped directly in front of him. She was so close he could have touched her. "You have taught me that strength is not about power. It is about will, and in that, you are the strongest warrior I have ever faced." She raised her 4 arms. Then she extended one hand toward him. "This fight is over," she declared, her voice ringing through the arena. "I declare it a draw." The crowd erupted in chaos. Shouts of anger, confusion, and disbelief filled the air. This had never happened. There had never been a draw in the arena of claiming. Victory or death, those were the only options. But Princess did not care about the crowd. She did not care about tradition or rules or history. She cared only about the broken, bleeding human standing before her. "Take my hand," she said softly. Looked at her offered hand. He looked at her face. He saw something there he had not expected. He saw respect. He reached out with his bloodied hand and took hers. And in that moment, everything changed. The royal medical chamber was made of crystal and light. Machines floated in the air, scanning his body and repairing his wounds with technologies far beyond anything Earth had developed. He lay on a platform of soft energy, watching the devices work on his broken flesh. He should have been dead, By all logic and reason, he should have been a corpse on the arena floor. But instead, he was here, being healed by the best medical science in the galaxy. Because Princess had declared a draw. The word spread across the empire like fire through dry grass. A draw. For the first time in 10,000 years of tradition, the arena of claiming had ended without victory or death. And it was because of a human. A small, weak, primitive human from a backwater planet at the edge of explored space. The Empire did not know how to react. Some saw it as an insult. The sacred traditions had been broken. The honor of the had been stained by this strange outcome. These voices called for the human's execution and for Princess to be punished for her decision. Others saw something different. They had watched the fight. They had seen this tiny creature stand against their greatest warrior and refuse to fall. They had witnessed something rare and beautiful, courage in its form. These voices spoke of respect and wonder. The loudest voice of anger belonged to Advisor. "This is unacceptable," he shouted in the Emperor's private chambers. "A draw? There has never been a draw. The ancient laws do not allow for draws." Emperor Or sat on his throne, his expression calm and unreadable. He had said nothing since the fight ended. He had simply watched as his daughter led the wounded human from the arena, as the crowd screamed in confusion, as his empire trembled on the edge of chaos. "The ancient laws," the Emperor finally said, "state that the fight continues until one cannot continue. They also give the winner the right to spare the loser." But she did not spare him. She called it a draw. She chose not to kill him when she clearly could have. That is mercy. That is within her right as the victor. His face twisted with fury. "Victor, that human landed blows on her. He made her bleed. How can you call her the victor?" "Because she is still standing and she has all 4 arms intact. The human required immediate medical care to survive. The outcome is clear. My daughter won. Then execute the human and be done with it." The Emperor's eyes finally showed emotion, cold, dangerous anger. "You forget yourself, Advisor. I decide who lives and who dies, not you." Stepped back, suddenly aware that he had gone too far. He bowed his head in false submission. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I speak only out of concern for our traditions." "Your concern is noted. Now leave. I wish to speak with my daughter alone." Turned and walked from the chamber. But as he passed through the door, his eyes burned with hidden rage. This was not over. The human would pay for what he had done, would make sure of it. An hour later, Princess entered her father's chambers. She had changed from her battle armor into simple robes, but she still carried herself like a warrior. She bowed to the Emperor with respect, but not submission. "Father," she said, "you wish to see me." "Sit down, daughter." Took a seat across from the throne. Father and daughter faced each other in silence for a long moment. "You surprised me today," the Emperor said finally. "In 500 fights I have never seen you hesitate, but with this human, you hesitated." "He was not like the others." "How so?" Thought carefully before answering. "The others fought to defeat me. They used strength, speed, skill, technology. They had plans and strategies, but the human, he did not fight to win. He fought to survive. He fought because fighting was all he had left. He had no hope of victory, but he fought anyway." "And this impressed you?" "It moved me," looked at her father with serious eyes. "I have killed warriors who were stronger than me, faster than me, better trained than me, but none of them showed true courage. They believed in their chances. They thought they could win. The human knew he would lose. He knew he would probably die, and he fought anyway. That is something I have never seen before." The Emperor considered her words. He was old, this king of the. He had ruled for centuries. He had seen empires rise and fall, species evolve and go extinct. But in all his long years, he had rarely seen his daughter speak with such passion. "What would you have me do with him?" he asked. "Let him live, give him honored guest status," and paused as if uncertain whether to continue. Consider his people for alliance. Alliance with humans, the Emperor raised an eyebrow. They are a young species, weak by galactic standards. What could they offer us? Hart said simply, will, the refusal to surrender. These are not small things, Father. I have fought the strongest warriors in the galaxy, but none of them had what that human has. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. Very well, the human will remain as an honored guest. His people will be considered for elevation to potential ally status. But his eyes grew hard. Be careful. There are those in the Empire who will not accept this, and his supporters will seek to destroy this human and any connection to his people. You must be ready to protect what you have chosen to value. I will be ready, said. I am always ready. That night, she visited in the medical chamber. He was sitting up now, most of his wounds sealed by the healing machines. He looked tired but alive, which was more than he had expected when he walked into that arena. You should be sleeping, said as she entered. Shrugged, hard to sleep when you almost died. The body wants to make sure it is still breathing. She sat down on a crystal chair near his platform. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the alien princess and the human cargo pilot. Why did you really fight? Asked. You could have chosen execution. It would have been quicker, less painful. Thought about the question. I spent 3 days preparing for that fight, and in those 3 days I thought a lot about why I was doing it. At first, I told myself it was about pride, about not dying on my knees, but that was not the whole truth. What was the whole truth? He met her glowing eyes. I wanted to show you something, all of you, the whole empire. You looked at me and saw a weak, primitive creature. You expected me to break. I wanted to prove you wrong. You succeeded. Did I? Reached out with one of her 4 hands and touched his arm gently. It was the first soft touch she had ever given an opponent. Humans have been fighting impossible odds since we first stood upright, she said, repeating his words from their conversation in his cell. That is what you said. Now I understand what you meant. Looked at her hand on his arm. Then he looked at her face. For the first time since he crashed on this planet, he felt something other than fear or determination. He felt hope. So what happens now? He asked. Smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Now, she said, we see what comes next, together. Outside the crystal walls of the medical chamber, the twin moons of the rose into the night sky. And somewhere in the shadows, Advisor watched with hatred in his eyes, already planning his next move. The human had survived the arena. But the real battle was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the duel that shook the empire. Stood on the balcony of his quarters in the imperial palace, watching the twin suns rise over the silver towers of the capital city. He still could not believe this was his life now. 6 months ago, he was a cargo pilot hauling supplies between human colonies. Now he was an honored guest of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, learning their language, their customs, their history, and spending every spare moment with their princess. Had changed him, not his body or his mind, but something deeper. Before the duel, he had been drifting through life without purpose. Now he woke each morning with energy and excitement. There was so much to learn, so much to experience, so much to share. He taught her human games, chess, cards, rock, paper, scissors. She laughed at how simple they were compared to strategy games, but she played anyway. He taught her human jokes, which she rarely understood but appreciated the effort. He taught her about Earth's history, its wars and triumphs, its art and music. In return, she taught him combat forms, modified for his 2-armed body. She taught him to read the flowing script of her language. She taught him the names of stars and the paths between them. They became something neither expected, partners, friends, and slowly, carefully something more. But not everyone celebrated this connection. Advisor had not been idle. In the shadows of the palace, he gathered allies who shared his hatred of the human outsider. Old nobles who believed in pure blood, military commanders who saw humanity as vermin, religious leaders who thought the sacred traditions had been violated. They called themselves the Purifiers, and they wanted dead. The attack came on a quiet evening. Was walking through the palace gardens with, enjoying the rare moment of peace. The night air was cool and sweet, filled with the scent of alien flowers. Then the assassins appeared. They came from everywhere at once, from behind statues, from beneath the water of decorative pools, from the darkness between trees. 20 warriors in black armor, wielding blades designed to kill quickly and quietly. Moved instantly. Her forearms reached for the weapons she always carried, hidden beneath her robes, but even she could not fight 20 warriors alone. "Stay behind me," she shouted but did not stay behind her. Instead, he grabbed a fallen branch from the ground and charged into the attackers. The months of training with had changed him. He was not strong like he would never be fast like them. But he had learned to move, to dodge, to find the spaces between their attacks. He had become something new, a human fighter trained in alien arts. The battle was chaos. Blades cut through assassins with deadly precision, ducked and weaved and struck whenever he saw an opening. They fought back to back, covering each other's weaknesses, moving like two parts of one machine. But there were too many enemies. Slowly, they were being pushed back. Then reinforcements arrived. The Emperor himself led them, a squad of royal guards who had heard the sounds of combat. They crashed into the assassins from behind, turning the tide of the battle. In moments, it was over. The Purifiers were dead or captured. Was among those taken alive. He was brought before the Emperor in chains, his twisted face still showing defiance. Even now, he did not regret what he had tried to do. "The human is a disease," spat. "He has poisoned your daughter's mind. He is destroying our empire from within. I was trying to save us." Emperor Or looked at his former advisor with cold eyes. "You were trying to murder an honored guest. You were trying to kill my daughter. There is nothing noble in what you did." He turned to his guards. "Take him to the deepest cell. He will spend the rest of his days thinking about his choices." As was dragged away, screaming curses, the Emperor turned to and, "You fought well," he said together. Bowed his head respectfully. "I had a good teacher." Stepped forward. There was something different in her posture, something certain and resolved. "Father," she said, "I have something to tell you." The Emperor waited. "In the arena of claiming, the ancient law states that I must marry whoever defeats me in combat, but no one has defeated me, not even," she looked at with warm eyes, "not even him. We ended in a draw." "That is correct. The law also says that if no one defeats me, I may choose my own partner. Is that not so?" The Emperor's expression shifted. Understanding dawned in his ancient eyes. "That is the law," he confirmed. Reached out and took his hand in one of her own. Her grip was gentle now, not the grip of a warrior but of something softer. "Then I choose," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the palace halls. "I choose this human, not because he defeated me but because he earned my respect, not because of law or duty but because of what I feel in my heart." Looked at her, surprised and overwhelmed. They had grown close over the past months, yes, but this was beyond anything he had expected. He whispered, "Are you sure, your people, your traditions?" "My people will learn," she interrupted. "My traditions will change. That is how all things grow, and I am sure, more sure than I have ever been about anything." She turned to her father, her glowing eyes filled with determination. Emperor Or was silent for a long moment. He looked at his daughter, the greatest warrior his people had ever produced. He looked at the small human beside her, the man who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. Then slowly, the ancient emperor smiled. "So be it," he declared. "The house of Or blesses this union. Let it be known across the empire and beyond. Of Earth is to be my daughter's chosen partner. Any who challenge this decision will answer to me." The news spread across the galaxy like light from an exploding star. The undefeated princess of the empire had chosen a human. A species once considered primitive and weak was now connected to one of the most powerful families in known space. On Earth, the story became legend. The cargo pilot who challenged a warrior princess, the ordinary man who refused to give up. Children played games pretending to be, fighting imaginary aliens with nothing but courage and stubbornness. Humanity's reputation transformed overnight. They were no longer seen as the young, weak species stumbling into a galaxy of giants. They were the species that did not quit, the species that adapted, the species that could stand against impossible odds and still be standing when the dust cleared. And in the grand palace of the empire, on a balcony overlooking a city of silver towers, Princess stood beside her chosen partner as the twin suns set on a new era. "Are you afraid?" she asked him. Thought about everything that had happened, the crash, the arena, the battle, the love that had grown between them despite every reason it should not have. "No," he said honestly. "I stopped being afraid when I stepped into that arena. I realized something that day." "What did you realize?" He turned to face her, taking both of her lower hands in his. "That fear only matters if you let it stop you. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act anyway. That is what makes us strong, not our bodies or our weapons or our technology, just choosing to keep going." Squeezed his hands gently. Her eyes shone with emotion. "That is why I love you," she said. "That is why I will always love you." They stood together on the balcony as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue world at the edge of explored space. Could not see it, but he knew it was there. His home, his species, his people. And thanks to one impossible duel, one stubborn refusal to surrender, humanity now stood tall among the stars. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were but because they never, ever gave up.